In this video, we'll discuss functions and look at how they differ from subroutines. As you'll see, the main difference is that functions can return a value, and this can be very useful. We've already seen how you can use the built-in functions within VBA, such as input box, and how they can be used to populate your variables. But in this video, we'll move on to look at how you can define your own functions. In the last video, we looked at how you could modularize your code by having separate subroutines which you then call. In addition to this modularization, if you use functions rather than subroutines, you have the advantage that each function can return a value. Let's look at an illustration of why that's so useful. Let's create a similar structure to the one that we used in the last video. So here's our macro, and we'll call it main once more. And let's say that inside this, we're going to call a function. And again, it's going to create a document. Now let's define the function. Again, we'll use the keyword private, but instead of sub, we say function. Then let's paste in the name and press enter. However, now there's one additional thing that we can do. We can define the type of data which our function will return. So in this case, let's say that we want the function to return the document which it actually creates. To specify this data type, after the parentheses which follows the name of the function, you put the as keyword in exactly the same way as when you're declaring a variable, followed by the data type. So for creating the document, let's use the code that we recorded before. So I'm going to copy all of this. And after our function has created a document, we now want to return a reference to that document. And the way that this is done in VBA is very similar to the way in which you assign a value to a variable. So because we've defined a function which returns an object, a document object, we need to use the keyword set. We then use the name of the function, so I'll just copy that and paste it in, equal to, and then we put a reference to the document. Because we've just created it, it's safe to say active document. So now we have a function that returns a value, which is the document that it's just created. We now have the option in the main module, in the main subroutine, the macro, of actually using that value, that document. So here, instead of just a function call, we could also populate a variable. So let's define a variable. And then here, we can actually populate that variable. Because it's an object, we'll use set equals, and then we've got our function call. However, when using this syntax, we can no longer use the keyword call, so we'll just remove that. And then to test that this is working, let's just use message box. The document contains, and then let's say doc new dot characters dot count ampersand characters. So now we can save our changes, and then let's test it. So here's our new document, and it contains 24 characters. So as you can see, the ability to return a value adds another dimension to functions which subroutines don't have. In the next video, we'll move on to look at how you can use parameters in subroutine and function calls, and this adds even more flexibility and more power to the process of modularization. In addition to modularizing your code, Functions are capable of returning information into a variable used in the function call. When defining a function, precede its name with the keywords private function. To specify the data type returned by a function, use the syntax as data type after the closing parentheses which follow the function name. To specify the value returned by a function, use the syntax let my function equal data value for functions which return data values, or set my function equal to object name for functions which return objects.